Hi, I'm Claire Larkin, and this is the story of how I learned that the people you trust most, your own family, can sometimes become your worst enemies. Especially in business. For 10 relentless years, I gave everything I had to our family's small tech company. Every hour, every breath, every dream. I turned it from a barely breathing startup into a $50 million enterprise. But success has a strange way of revealing the cracks in people's hearts. Sometimes the ones who should be clapping the loudest are the ones sharpening their knives behind your back. I still remember the beginning. Like a scene etched in amber. Back then, our company was just a modest little computer repair shop tucked into the corner of a strip mall in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My dad, Thomas Larkin, had opened it 2 decades ago. It was his pride and joy, even if it barely scraped enough profit to keep the lights on and food on the table. My older sister, Vanessa, was always the star. The golden child. Straight A's, valedictorian, full ride to Redgate Business School, and later a rising star in New York's consulting world. And me? I was the quiet one. The one who stayed behind to help Dad, juggling late-night virus removals while grinding through my computer science degree at a local college. "You're wasting your potential here, Claire," Vanessa used to say when she breezed in for a visit, still wearing her designer heels and polished ambition. "You should aim higher." But I saw something in that dusty little shop that no one else did. Potential. While Vanessa was buried in case studies and spreadsheets, I was learning real-world programming, fixing bugs in ancient cash registers, and talking to struggling small business owners who had no clue how to manage their inventory. That's where it all began. In my final year of college, I created our first proprietary software. Nothing flashy, just a clean, easy-to-use inventory tool for small businesses. Affordable, friendly, actually useful. Dad was skeptical at first. He'd always been a hardware guy. But when our neighborhood businesses started buying licenses and spreading the word, "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," he said one night, eyes soft with something that almost looked like pride. Oh, if only I'd known how fleeting those words would be. From there, everything snowballed. I poured myself into the work. 14-hour days, 7 days a week, no vacations, no weekends, just lines of code and client calls and stubborn bugs at 2 a.m. Meanwhile, Vanessa was climbing the glossy rungs of corporate America, hosting PowerPoints and networking over cocktails. But I was building something real, something solid. Our tiny shop evolved into Larkin Dynamics, a lean software development firm. Our client list grew from local bakeries and print shops to regional distributors and national retail chains. My best friend, an unofficial therapist, Jules, watched it all unfold with quiet concern. "Claire, don't push yourself so hard," she'd say gently, setting a warm meal on my desk. "You need a life outside of this place." But I couldn't stop. Maybe it was the vision that kept me going. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, it was the hope that one day, my family would see me as more than just the backup plan. Then 5 years into our transformation, something huge happened. We hit our first million in annual revenue. And just like clockwork, Vanessa suddenly remembered the family business existed. She quit her job in New York, rolled her designer luggage back home, and showed up at Sunday dinner like a queen returning to her court. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," she announced. All confidence and champagne charm. With my background, we could really take things to the next level. Dad nearly teared up. "That's wonderful, princess. We could use your professional touch around here." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. My brain stuttered. The company I had built from nothing, every line of code, every sleepless night was being offered to her like a party favor. But I smiled, nodded, tried to be the bigger person. Vanessa was named co-CEO the following week. No experience in our sector, no product knowledge. But Dad said it would be good optics. A polished executive face to help attract investors. I swallowed my pride and focused on the work: product development, client relations, quality control, while Vanessa took charge of branding, interviews, and company image. The next 5 years, a masterclass in contrast. While I led innovation and kept our clients happy, Vanessa painted herself as the visionary. She strutted across tech panels, gave TED-style talks about women in leadership, and accepted awards for innovations my team had developed. Every headline had her name. Every spotlight pointed her way. I was just the shadow backstage, keeping the machine running. But the tension, oh, it grew. Quiet at first, like smoke in the walls. Vanessa began cutting me out of key meetings, making decisions behind closed doors, redesigning workflows without even a heads up. Slowly, quietly, I was being erased from the very thing I had created. And worst of all, nobody seemed to notice. Or maybe, they just didn't care. Then came Dad's 60th birthday. The night everything unraveled. Of course the party was Vanessa's idea. She went all out, rented the grand ballroom at the Crown Regent, one of the most extravagant hotels in downtown Boston. She invited every business associate we'd ever shaken hands with. Clients, investors, potential partners, old college friends. It was less of a birthday, and more of a staged networking gala. But that was Vanessa in a nutshell. Nothing was ever just sentimental, everything had to serve her strategy. I arrived early to help set up, wearing a simple black dress and a tired smile. The moment she saw me, Vanessa's eyes scanned me top to bottom. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" she hissed as she adjusted a floral centerpiece. "These are important people coming tonight." I swallowed hard, no point responding. I simply turned and started greeting guests as they arrived. The ballroom filled fast. The clinking of champagne glasses, laughter that felt a little too rehearsed, the heavy scent of peonies, and political ambition. Vanessa moved through the room like she was campaigning for Congress. I stayed near the edge, checking the schedule, coordinating with the caterers, making sure everything actually functioned. And then came dinner. Halfway through the entree, Vanessa stood up and clanked her wineglass with a dainty silver fork. I assumed she'd deliver a warm tribute to Dad, maybe something touching from our childhood. Something that might, just for a moment, make us feel like a family again. But no, instead she dropped a bomb that detonated in the center of the room and splintered our world into silence. "As we celebrate my father's 60th birthday tonight," she began, her voice poised and deliberate, "I also think it's the perfect time to announce some important changes at Larkin Dynamics." My fork froze mid-air. My stomach turned. "What change?" "The board has unanimously agreed," she continued, her gaze sweeping the crowd and then landing directly on me, "that in order to position ourselves for long-term growth, we need a unified voice at the helm. What board meetings? What vote?" Her eyes glittered. "That's why, effective immediately, I will be stepping in as sole CEO of Larkin Dynamics. It's time for certain elements, that are no longer serving our momentum, to step aside." Gasps echoed. Forks paused mid-bite. Whispers crept like vines across the tablecloths. I sat frozen, completely still. Her voice, now coated in rehearsed sympathy, filled the air like poison. "Some people," she said with a sweet smile, "are better suited to technical roles rather than strategic leadership. My sister Claire, for example, has done a decent job maintaining legacy system. But let's face it, we're no longer a repair shop." I turned to look at Dad. "Please, say something, tell her to stop." But he was nodding. He was actually nodding, proud, smiling, like this was the plan all along. Mom stared down at her plate, lips pressed tightly together, hands trembling just enough for me to notice. "The truth is," Vanessa's voice sharpened, "Claire's old-fashioned approach and lack of business training have become a liability. We're entering a new era, and we need bold vision, not comfort zone coding." Her words sliced right through me. "Worthless, obsolete, a liability, all of it," said in front of hundreds of eyes. I stood slow. My chair scraped the polished marble floor with a screech that made the chandeliers seem to shudder. Everyone turned to me. I could feel their curiosity burning. Was I going to cry, shout, throw wine in her face? No. I picked up my purse, walked to Dad's table, placed a small wrapped package in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said softly. Then I walked out of the ballroom, head high, shoulders back, leaving behind the champagne, the judgment and the betrayal. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by glowing monitors and framed patents that bore my name. I stared at my reflection, in the darkened window, and made a decision. Vanessa thought she had won. But she forgot something crucial, something that would turn her perfect little coup into the worst mistake of her entire career. I powered up my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard and then I began to type. A small knowing smile played at the edge of my lips. Tomorrow would be, after all, I had learned how to build an empire from scratch. Vanessa had only learned how to pose beside it for a photo op. The next morning, broke clean and cold. Crisp sunlight poured through the windows of Larkin Dynamics. I arrived before anyone else, waited in the conference room like I owned the place. Because in a way I did. At exactly 9 a.m., the front doors opened. Vanessa strode in like royalty, a silk blouse fluttering with every smug step. Dad followed behind her, full of paternal pride and oblivious confidence. Claire. Vanessa blinked, visibly thrown. What are you doing here? After last night, I assumed you'd have the dignity to, well, stay home. I smiled. Oh my God, the look on her face was going to be delicious. I'm just wrapping up a few loose ends, sister dear. But since you're here, we should probably chat about the company's future. There's nothing to discuss. Dad cut in sharply. Vanessa's in charge now. The board has already approved it. Yes, the board, I replied, sliding my tablet onto the table. Let's talk about that. They both blinked. You see, I continued, tapping the screen. While Vanessa was busy hosting luncheons and collecting accolades, I was doing the actual work. Building the foundation, writing the code, winning the client. And there are a few important details you both seem to have completely forgotten. I looked up. And I was ready. I tapped my tablet and the conference room screen lit up behind me. The first document blinked into view. Let's start with this, I said calmly. A quick reminder that I currently hold 51% of Larkin Dynamics. Vanessa blinked. What? When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave us each 25% of the company and held on to the remaining 50 himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital to scale, I paused, watching Dad's face shift. You sold me 6% of your shares, Dad. Remember, you were too busy flying to Vanessa's leadership awards ceremony to handle the paperwork yourself, so you signed off on the sale without reading the clauses. I pulled up the signed documents, the ones he had initialed in a rush, assuming nothing mattered as long as Vanessa smiled for the cameras that day. Color drained from both of their faces. That's impossible, Vanessa whispered. Her hands, perfectly manicured as always, gripped the edge of the table. Dad would never. He did, I said, sliding to the next file. And that's not all. Let's talk about the core software, the system that generates over 80% of this company's annual revenue. It's not owned by Larkin Dynamics. They both stared at me. It's owned by Nexware Solutions LLC, my separate entity. The software is only licensed to Larkin Dynamics. I checked my watch and smiled faintly. And that license agreement? It expired about 10 minutes ago. Dad collapsed into the nearest chair like someone had knocked the wind out of him. The renewal papers, he mumbled. The ones you asked me to sign last week. Yes. I nodded. The ones you ignored because you were busy helping Vanessa plan that lovely birthday ambush. Vanessa's expression twisted into something dark and feral. You underhanded little careful. I interrupted. Voice still smooth. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. I swiped again. While you were busy crafting your little coup last night, I was sending emails to every major client, vendor and employee connected to this company. I let them know about the leadership change. I also reminded them that the loyalty clauses in their contracts were tied to me, my name, my credibility, my track record. I turned the tablet around. Emails flooded the screen, termination notices, transition confirmations, personal notes of support. Dozens of them. I raised an eyebrow. Would you like to know how many contracts were voided overnight? Or how many of our top developers, who are, by the way, employed directly by Nexware, have already accepted positions at my new venture? Silence. Through the glass walls we could see heads popping up from cubicle. Phones lit up. Whispers spread like wildfire. People were reading emails, refreshing inboxes, checking Slack threads. Vanessa's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. She began frantically scrolling through her phone. You can't do this, she stammered. The company, this company. The company you tried to steal from me, I said sharply. The one you thought you could just slide into because you have an MBA and Dad's blind devotion. I stepped forward. My voice never rose, but the weight behind it filled the room. That company stopped existing the moment you stood on that stage and humiliated me in front of the people I built this with. I took a breath, smoothed my dress, looked them both dead in the eye. So, here are your options. Option 1, I said. I walk away, with my share, with my software, with my clients, with my team, and Larkin Dynamics becomes an empty shell. You can spend the rest of the quarter explaining to all those important people from last night why the company's valuation dropped to zero in under 24 hours. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Or, he asked weakly. Option 2, I said, folding my arms. You both resign. Today, I take full control of Larkin Dynamics. You keep your shares but only as silent partner. You'll get dividends, sure, but you'll have no say in how I run things. Vanessa gets a severance package, a glowing recommendation, and a fresh start, somewhere far away from here. Vanessa's face turned an alarming shade of red. You planned this all of it. You were just waiting to stab us in the back. I let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. No, Vanessa. I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter, a good sister. I poured myself into this business while you collected trophies for my work. I only started planning. I checked my watch again. About 12 hours ago, right after you called me worthless in front of the entire industry, my phone buzzed. Another client termination confirmation. Time's running out, I said softly. What's it going to be? The next hour blurred into ink and legal language. Lawyers flew in. Paperwork was signed. Hands were shaken and withdrawn. By noon, I sat alone in what was now officially my office. My view stretched across the Boston skyline. The company I built was finally mine. But the victory, it didn't taste sweet. It tasted like ash. The relationships I once held so close lay in ruins. Trust shattered like a dropped wine glass. That evening, Mom came to see me. Her eyes were swollen, red from crying. Did it have to end this way? She asked, barely above a whisper. I looked at her. My voice was gentle, but unwavering. They gave me no choice, Mom. They would have gutted everything I built and left me with nothing. She nodded slowly, sad, but understanding. What happens now? I opened the folder on my desk, showed her the plans I'd been quietly nurturing for months. New platforms, expansion proposals, innovations I had kept on hold until I was free to pursue them. Now I said, I build something even bigger, but this time, I do it without carrying people who see me as disposable. Over the next year, Larkin Dynamics tripled in value. We launched new verticals. Our client base exploded. Industry publications finally started naming the right person behind the breakthroughs. Vanessa landed a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled, quieter, hopefully wise. Dad retired shortly after. He never apologized outright. But sometimes when we meet at holidays, I can see it in his eyes. The silent regret of a man who let his golden child nearly destroy everything he'd spent a lifetime building. We're cordial now, polite, but distant. The warmth never quite came back. Sometimes, late at night, I scroll through old family photos. My heart aches for what we lost, for what could have been. But then I remember the birthday party, the look on Vanessa's face, the way Dad nodded as she tore me apart. In business and in family, respect is earned, not inherited. They learned that lesson too late. As for me, I learned that sometimes, it's the quiet ones, the ones the world overlooks, the ones dismissed as just technical, just support, just background noise who end up changing everything. We're the ones who know how to build from nothing. We learn in silence. We grow without applause. And when someone tries to steal what we've created, we don't yell, we reclaim. My story made its rounds through business circles. It didn't take long. The whispers started at conferences, industry panels, trade ex. I'd walk into a room and hear the hushed murmur ripple down the aisle. That's Claire Larkin, the one who. They never finished the sentence. They didn't need to. My success spoke louder than any rumor ever could. Last week a formal letter arrived. I opened it slowly, knowing from the seal alone where it came from. Redgate Business School, Vanessa's alma mater, the one that once rejected my application outright. They were inviting me to give the commencement address at their upcoming graduation ceremony. The theme, hidden strengths, the power of underestimated leaders. I laughed, not bitterly, just with wonder. Then I smiled. A real one, the kind that comes from deep peace. I accepted the invitation without hesitation. I already know exactly what I'll say. I'll tell them a story about a girl in a strip mall repair shop, about a dream no one took seriously, and about what happens when you bet against someone who builds with both logic and heart. The company thrives under my leadership. We've expanded into 5 new verticals, launched 2 groundbreaking platforms, and just closed a record-breaking round of strategic partnerships. But those aren't the milestones I measure anymore. What matters more, that I've found peace with my choices. Because sometimes the strongest message you can send isn't vengeance. It isn't noise. It isn't fireworks or scandal. It's proving people wrong by doing it right. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about burning bridges. It's about rising so high they're forced to look up and see everything they lost. As I write this now from my office overlooking the city skyline, I think of something Mom once told me during one of our quiet evening talks. Success is the best revenge, Claire. But real wisdom, that's knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved beyond the need for revenge. These days I'm focused on building something bigger, something lasting, something that outlives all the noise and envy. And yet there's one thing I've kept, one item still sitting on the shelf behind my desk. A small box still wrapped in dark blue paper, the ribbon slightly faded. The birthday present I never gave Dad. Inside is a photo album, one that chronicles the entire journey, from that tiny shop with flickering fluorescent lights, to the glass-walled office towers we now fill with innovation. Maybe someday when the wounds have softened and the silence aren't so sharp, I'll hand it to him. Maybe he'll open it and see not just what I built, but who I became. Until then, it stays right where it is. This story is a powerful reminder that loyalty should never be mistaken for weakness, and silence is not the same as submission. Claire Larkin gave everything to build a company from the ground up, only to be betrayed by the very people who should have stood by her. But instead of lashing out, she chose strategy, patience and truth. And in the end, she didn't just win back control, she redefined what it means to lead with integrity. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or used by those closest to you, Claire's journey is proof that quiet strength can roar the loudest. On this channel we tell real emotional stories of betrayal, resilience, and powerful comebacks that remind us we're never alone, and that sometimes the best revenge is rising so high they're forced to look up. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe and share to support the channel. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need these stories of hope and strength. And in the comments let us know what country or region are you watching from. We'd love to hear from you and see how far these stories are traveling. Thank you for being part of this community.